Good evening everybody and welcome back to BS News. The NHS recently released guidelines stating that if your child has COVID, they can still safely go to school, because do not forget, everything is fine now. In case you're one of the few people that are still interested in getting a COVID-19 vaccination, if you live in the UK, as stated earlier, do not bother because we are not providing those anymore because they are a burden to the poor taxpayers. The only way that you can actually get a funded vaccination is if you meet these particular criteria and you're one of the weak and feeble people of our population. I don't know quite why we're actually protecting them anyway. Look what they did in the USA, okay? In 2022, they actually stopped masking altogether and nothing bad has ever happened there. Why can't we just follow in their footsteps? I've never seen a mask out and about, and you know what? I've had COVID 4 times and I've been completely fine. It's just a little cold. Why am I even having to report on this? Can somebody please tell me? This is actually ridiculous. Do you remember when this video came out from Vanessa Hudgens? I'm actually just going to play it right now because I keep it saved on my phone.
Yeah, people are gonna die. It's just terrible, but inevitable?
She was right, wasn't she? Because look at our economy now that everything's back to normal. Yes, absolutely, some poor feeble people have passed away, but they were a burden on society. So why should we have to pick up their slack? Oh, in other news, billionaires just keep getting richer. Find out how they do it just after the break. This is a heads up that you probably don't need, but in this video we're going to be talking about the fact that people have passed away, about people becoming disabled, all from COVID-19, and yes, I am not censoring myself, I'm even saying pandemic in this video, and good luck to me for actually getting monetized on this. I don't even know if it will happen, but as usual, I do not go into graphic stories, I do not show graphic images, so you are in a safer space, and as much as I try and inject levity and hope into all the content that I make, including in this video, that doesn't mean that we are shying away from the very dark reality which people are actually living in. And I really want to say, if you have lost someone from COVID-19, or if you yourself or someone that you know has become disabled from COVID-19, I am so sorry, because the thing is, this was entirely preventable, and the things which are coming up now are also preventable, so we're going to be talking all about it now. Everything is back to normal now. Well, the stats don't really say so, because COVID-19 hospitalizations continue to increase across the US, rising for the 8th consecutive week to levels not seen since January 2023. As of Friday the 5th of January, only 19.4% of adults aged 18 and older have received the updated vaccine, CDC data shows. This is obviously in the USA. And cases have been spiking all over the world, with the newest variant, JN.1, which I'll just refer to as JN1 for now. It hasn't been blessed with its Greek name as of yet, but maybe it'll even have a title by the time this video even comes out. It is fast becoming the most dominant variant of COVID-19 globally. About 40% of recorded cases are actually JN1. And JN1 is a descendant of the highly mutated Omicron spawn BA 2.86. Early on in the pandemic, experts were warning that the more people that get COVID, the more likely it is to mutate, become more viral, potentially more deadly. Yet, look what's happened. How many variants have we had now? And we have to note that JN1 is a descendant from Omicron, the most viral strain to date. However, there is a huge issue with the fact that there is limited testing in many countries around the world, including in affluent ones. So cases will actually be much higher than what we're seeing in statistics. A lot of places actually stopped reporting on COVID numbers regularly around 2022, like Reuters stopped reporting on it completely. So many places actually just started to opt out because they didn't want to talk about it anymore, basically. And what actually happened was the case numbers were going from daily updates into weekly updates, which actually data scientists do prefer. So what I noticed here in Aotearoa, as someone that actually did keep across all of the COVID updates daily, I always read the comments section, and people were always saying, oh, we're so sorry for the loss of this person, because obviously we've had deaths here. I know it's not as high as the rest of the world, but still, every life matters as far as I'm concerned. That does not mean that I'm pro-forced birth, okay? But what happened in that comment section when it went to weekly was people were saying, you don't need to be afraid of this fake virus. Ugh, masks are just for weak people. And worst of all, at least in my opinion, this is just survival of the fittest. Eugenics is inescapable, it seems, and I hate it. cast your mind back to the early days of the pandemic when news stories were actually centering on the fact that people were really glad to not be spending time in traffic anymore every day. There were dolphins turning up in Venice. There were actually reports on how productivity went up for people who were able to work from home. And all of the parents that had to go into homeschooling their kids, they all realised the sheer amount of work that teachers did, and so they actually went on to support the teachers and say, wow, you do so much work, you should get paid more, why aren't you getting more supplies? We were actually appreciating our essential workers. People were saying how much you need to treat everybody with kindness, especially our vulnerable population. And then stories like that quickly faded to be about businesses are suffering, especially the really big businesses. We've got to feel for the big businesses that are suffering here. There are stories lamenting the loss of company culture. And governments globally started to shift their messaging to get everybody back to normal. AKA, spend your money, stop thinking about how much of your life you spend working at a job that you absolutely hate and you would rather spend that time with your family. No, the solution is to shop, travel, and consume. That, of course, is really the only option because capitalism can only really exist in a growth economy. But if people are saying that they should get paid more, that they want more worker rights, and they actually want to work less hours, and oh my gosh, they don't need as much stuff to be happy, that doesn't work out so well for shareholders. Isn't it funny how we're in a cost of living crisis now, yet it was actually big businesses that benefited the absolute most from the pandemic, also the billionaires, and yet now, after all of that work that people were trying to do to get better workers' rights and actually more equal pay, now we're in a job market which is actively kind of punishing people. Job security is a huge issue now. I posted this up on Instagram and I got flooded with responses from people globally. Thank you so much to everybody that did actually have a conversation with me. It was really, really great to talk to you all. If you ever do want to connect with me, Instagram is always in the description box down below, by the way. Every time a new message came in, I had the same nerves as when I was single because you do not know what you're actually going to open up.
Now put that thing back where it came from, or so help me!
As promised, though, anonymity is of utmost importance because I do know the precariousness of the job market and people are getting fired for all sorts of nonsense reasons in my books. The thing is that COVID isn't being reported on like it used to be, and people are living a very different reality to what is even being shared in news stories that are about COVID. Workplaces are using intimidation tactics to make sure that you don't even say that you've got COVID. Your workplaces are also using intimidation tactics to make sure that people, even if infected with COVID, are not wearing a mask at work to not scare away the customers. People are dealing with the reality of governments absolutely abandoning them, and people aren't even able to take sick leave when they do have COVID. So let's start there.
The pandemic is over.
A bold and optimistic statement.
Sick leave? What's that? So we don't actually know exactly how many cases of COVID are out there because testing has become inaccessible to so many people. They're even having to rely on wastewater testing to get somewhat accurate numbers. In most countries, it actually costs money to get a rat test, and in the countries where you're able to access a free one, it's not the most accessible way to be able to get them, let's just say. And when it comes to the accuracy of rat tests, Emily McLean, an epidemiologist at the University of Sydney, said when tests were used according to manufacturer instructions, average sensitivity by brand ranged from around 34% to 93%. And getting a PCR test is near impossible. And the thing is, right, what is the incentive to even get a COVID test to begin with in a country where you don't get any sick leave and you do not get any medical support if you do even have COVID to begin with? In most affluent countries, for those who work full-time, you do actually get sick leave of about 5 to 10 days on average. However, you can be infectious with COVID for 10 days total. So what good even is that? In the good old US of A, where I know most of you are from, there are actually no federal guidelines around sick leave. 77% of the private sector has paid sick days, and even then, from what you were sharing with me, workplaces were intimidating you to actually not say that you had COVID, say that you have a nasty cold or a respiratory infection, but not COVID. And the thing that was even more dystopian to me was that businesses even had 5 guaranteed sick leave days if you do have COVID. However, because of intimidation tactics that were being used by businesses that even had these protections in place to begin with, you still weren't allowed to even say that you had COVID. This is why I'm so stringent about making sure that there's anonymity here, because this is scary stuff.
This is the bad place.
And what's even worse to me is there are a number of you who work in healthcare, that work in aged care, that work in care homes, and all of you were actually saying like the issues around masking and how masking is so strongly discouraged and how people are still encouraged to actually go to work when they're sick with COVID, even when dealing with the most vulnerable people, even when dealing with sick people, because you know what happened? Companies do not have enough staff to cover people when they're sick. So it's always on the team members, otherwise you're letting the team down, and all of these intimidation tactics. So we have these workers who are not in a position of power having to go to work when they're sick with COVID or be around others who are sick with COVID, and they cannot wear a mask to protect themselves or others. And we're wondering why cases are spiking. I mean, imagine if masking had become normalized. But the scarier thing is, from what you were sharing with me, it's not just from the news stories, but people were being attacked if they do wear a mask. This is not just like anomaly sort of things. It's actually been this continual intimidation practice, which was actually kind of put in place by Trump. And you know what? The reason that Trump didn't even want to wear a mask to begin with, as was exposed from someone that was actually on his team, it's because his makeup came off. As someone that also wears makeup, you can deal with it. But I know it's all of his fragile ego and everything, but that is the reason that he started just saying, no need to wear a mask, you don't need to wear a mask. So then he was able to just get away with not wearing one in pretty much all cases, unless he was absolutely forced to. And then he of course turned all of his followers into like thinking the same as him, and he was seeing it as a sign of weakness if you wear a mask. Like, the amount of things that Trump has done to damage the world, I could just go on, but we're going to try and shorten this video a little bit, okay? In 2020 and early 2021, a lot of governments around the world, not all of them, were actually trying to do the right thing, right? Like, they were encouraging people to stay at home unless they were essential workers. They were providing free masks. They were doing free vaccinations. They were doing like those scan check-in points to make sure that we had contact tracing in place. Like, do you remember in the UK when people were actually clapping for medical workers? Wow, what a different time we live in now. But it's these same nurses, doctors, surgeons and medical staff workers who were put on the front line and had to face into the governments around the world changing their minds on policies and procedures and mask wearing constantly. And then that confuses all of the patients and their families. And so then they go getting really angry at the medical workers who are trying to enforce rules to make sure that everybody can stay safe. Sadly, dealing with patients dying on a mass scale like what was happening, being given inadequate PPE, sometimes no PPE, for these poor workers. However, from what you were sharing with me, along with all of the stories that we've seen with surgeons, doctors, nurses, with Sue offside, from the pandemic and from all of the pressures, all of the work, all of the hate and vitriol that actually was put against them, and all of the unsafe working conditions that they were made to work in, a lot of people have actually just left the industry because they can't cope with it, including some of you that were actually just saying it completely broke you and how bad your mental health is now. Why are we actually wondering why people don't want to go into study to become a doctor, nurse or surgeon, when look at the conditions that people are having to put up with, and then look at the pay that they're actually getting, and look at like all of the support systems in place for them, aka zero. So it's no wonder to me that we're actually struggling to get people to go into these fields, regardless of whether you have to get a student loan or not, to go into this level of study for 4, 8, 12 years in a cost of living crisis. That's actually not possible for a lot of people. Plus there are many systemic issues when it comes to actually the training of doctors, when it comes to placement and all sorts of stuff. I've covered that a little bit in here, and I'll be talking about that in my future videos.
Vaccine, vaccine, vaccine. I'm begging of you, please don't hesitate.
Vaccine access, a luxury even for wealthy countries. Vaccine access has actually been an issue right from the start of the pandemic, with lower and lower middle income countries actually being severely disadvantaged. They were unable to achieve at least 10% population coverage during initial vaccine rollouts, as this paper shows. But we do know the issues here, right? Like with big pharma companies holding on to their patents because money, greed, and of course it comes down to the fact that we had wealthier countries actually not helping when it comes to the distribution of the vaccines, because they actually had to be chilled, in case you forgot, and that is kind of an issue when you need to have like refrigerated trucks going to places. So vaccinating lower income countries became too hard, and then millions of people have suffered from this. But it's not just like in the short term that they've suffered, it's actually in the long term, with their economic viability being deeply impacted by this. And this has made them more susceptible to countries actually taking advantage of that position. I think it's really important to actually highlight that the world turned its back on people right from the start. It's just now it's turning its back on people who are in more affluent countries, and let's face it, whiter people. And so that means that people are, caring a bit more, even though this has been a huge issue right from the get-go. So you know how teeth are luxury bones? That's the realm that vaccines are actually going into now. We've got affluent countries saying that they're no longer going to be funding COVID vaccinations. Like right here in Aotearoa, our government has actually just changed to be incredibly right-leaning and, in my opinion, terrifying. And they are now considering that they don't have to actually fund COVID vaccines for people to get for free anymore. So that would mean that people would have to pay for their vaccines. And who is this going to impact the most? The same people that the pandemic has actually impacted the most already. In my opinion, this is just punishing the poor, and the government is really reminding me of Jafar.
What are you doing? Giving you your reward. Your eternal reward.
But it's not just here, it's also in my motherland, the UK, where you can't actually get a COVID-19 vaccination unless you meet certain criteria, and those criteria are pretty stringent. From this article from The Guardian, Professor Stephen Griffin, a virologist at the University of Leeds, raised concerns about the restricted access to boosters, and stressed that the longer-term consequences of COVID infections has not been properly accounted for in the way the UK was handling the pandemic. The accumulative damage to health with a disproportionate impact on disadvantaged groups is profound. There are countries around the world where you can still get COVID vaccinations and boosters for free, including in the USA, oddly enough, which I was not expecting. However, I really do want to highlight the fact that there are countries looking at peeling this stuff back, or if they've already done it already, like in the UK's case. So I really just want to implore you, go get boosted if you haven't yet, because everybody really needs to be protected, okay?
Unbelievable.
This is the lowest I've ever been. Emotionally and physically.
The thing is, so much is still unknown. Studies have indeed been done on COVID and long COVID, and we've actually been getting the results of 2-year studies on this. However, we still do not know all of the impacts of long COVID, of COVID on the body, and we're kind of in a scary social experiment sort of situation here. Like, do you remember in 1918 there was this kind of famous flu that happened? That's actually been linked to Alzheimer's. Something which I don't think anybody actually wants. Dr. Eric Topol on his website Ground Truths has actually said, "We're going to need many more years of careful follow-up to fully understand the ways and extent to which COVID has hurt us." I really do recommend the website because he's actually taken a really keen interest from the pandemic from the start and actually breaks down all of the studies that have been done on it and actually looks at multiple news sources. It's fantastically done, of course, along with all of my sources. It's going to be in the description box down below. But there are definitely some worrying signs, especially when it comes to long COVID, because people always say, "Oh, it only lasts like a few months, it's just 6 months. I got COVID in April of last year. You don't see all of the sickness I deal with on a daily basis." There are 2 million Americans getting COVID every single day, and yet everything's normal. This is just what it's like living with COVID. No, this is not what it's like living with COVID. Living with COVID is actually making some changes and alterations, which I will get to in the final section, because I always like to provide actions that we can take in actual hope, because otherwise I will cry, as I have done when working on this video.
It's happening again. I have to. Will you excuse me? It was really nice talking to you.
Oh, and for the people that keep on saying like, "Oh, well, the more times I get COVID, the more like strong I become." No, it's actually the opposite. You want to never get COVID if possible. Switching gears to personal experience, COVID has changed my life completely, to the point where before I can even go to the doctor to try and explain my long COVID symptoms, I have to ask Brandon what my symptoms are, because I forget everything now. You don't even know how much harder it is to just make videos now, how much harder it is for me to do everything in life. You don't see me collapse in the shower. You don't see Brandon have to carry me places because I'm too weak. You do not hear the tinnitus that affects me nearly every single day. You do not see my migraines. You don't see everything that has completely collapsed for me. And that's just me. People have it so much worse than me. For someone that loves to be in control and always be productive, my life is now a mess. What's incredibly frustrating to me is here in Aotearoa, long COVID isn't really recognised as a thing, including by my doctor, who I had to convince multiple times, taking like this list that my husband has made. Yes, because I'm a woman, I have to have my husband vouch for me. I've talked about that before. And you know what my doctor can do for me? They can write a letter to my work telling them that I have to work less. We're in a cost of living crisis, mate. You really think me being on less money to afford the medication I need to be on to be alive is a good thing? Because I don't.
Can we think about it?
Yeah, of course.
I thought about it. Fuck you.
I'm that weirdo that wears a mask everywhere. I work from home as much as possible, and I was doing that before I got COVID. For this to be the most alienating time in my life, when I was a weird and very traumatized kid, and very bullied kid, that's saying an awful lot, okay? It hurts every time that I see people that I love and care about go out to like concerts not wearing a mask, when I see people just going on planes not wearing masks, when I see people just making jokes about, oh, well, I got COVID again, this will work great for my immunity. And these are people that I love, and it's like, I can't even quite describe that feeling, to be honest with you. So when I say it's very alienating, yeah, it really is. Okay, it hurts a lot, and I'm being very vulnerable by even saying any of this, so I'm going to shut myself up because I don't want to cry again. And for all of the ableist, healthist people who just keep on saying things like, well, if you're healthy to begin with, when you get COVID, it doesn't actually matter. It's just a mild cold. You're fine. I just really want to point out all of these athletes right here who actually got COVID and their lives have been forever changed. When people who could compete in the Olympics get taken down by COVID, friend, stop it, okay? COVID can impact anybody deeply. COVID can kill anybody. COVID can disable anybody, all right? If you're stuck in this sort of mindset, whether it's from a point of denial or healthism or whatever, again, all of my sources are in the description box down below. I cite everything, okay?
We don't ever want to see you again. Get out of town. Don't ever come back. Get out. Get out. Get out.
Let's switch gears to something positive and what we can actually do, because I don't want anybody leaving this video completely sad and heartbroken, okay? Firstly, if you've made it to the end of this video, I am nearly certain that you'll actually be feeling the same sort of alienation, hopelessness, sadness that I deal with very often. You are not alone in that feeling, okay? From all of the conversations that I was having with you, which was so many, everybody was feeling like this. People have become like scared to actually say what they're feeling because everybody's meant to be normal now. Everything is meant to be normal now. Everybody's going to Europe. Everyone's going on these amazing trips. Like, I get excited to go to a strawberry patch. Okay. Like, and even after being there for half an hour, I had to have like an hour nap. I was completely exhausted for the rest of the day for being out for half an hour. When you're told that you're in the wrong for actually taking precautions when there's a virus which is still sweeping the earth, which is killing thousands of people a week, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around and to actually feel okay in, so I fully get it, alright? If you want to know what to do to make yourself feel safer and to make other people actually a lot safer, just follow these few guidelines. One of the easiest things you can do is wear a mask indoors, and no, it is not a sign of cowardice. Like, if you are believing what Trump has put forward, remember, he was ashamed of the fact that his makeup got smudged. Dude needs to discover setting spray. If you're curious about what masks to wear, the surgical masks along with the cloth masks are basically useless. So here is some guidelines, and I'll also have this link down below. For a global reference, P2 is the Australian standard, N95 is the American, KN95 meets Chinese specifications, and KN94 is the Korean equivalent. Personally for me, I wear the KN94 and I find them really comfortable. When I was wearing like the ones with the straps all the way around the head, I found that too much for me. So KN94 just loops around the ear, so that is my personal recommendation. If you're without any other options, then yes, of course, grab the surgical mask because those are the ones that are normally freely given. But yeah, it's really not as effective, okay? In countries like South Korea and Japan, like, it's so normal to wear a mask in cold season or if you're sick to protect others. It's so weird that in Western countries there is this like people are being attacked. I don't understand it. We've really got to get over this individualism mindset, okay, people? The other easiest piece of advice I can give you is to get boosted if you're in a country where that is available to you. Make sure that your vaccine data is up to date, and it makes a really big difference, okay? The third most easy thing that you can do, you want to hang out with people, you want to socialize. I fully 100% get it. The easiest thing that you can do is meet up with people outside. Yes, I do understand that we're in like winter, well, you're in winter for a lot of you, haha, suckers in the Northern Hemisphere. We're in summer right now, so it makes it a lot easier. Meet with people outdoors, whether it's like in a restaurant that is outdoors, something that is shaded with like space around you, parks. Like I said, I went story picking and it was amazing and I really want to go again. Or if you don't feel like going rambling in the full outdoors, you can actually go to a place that has a really good airflow, like opening windows. Even if you're at home and you're seeing people at home, I would still recommend people test beforehand, and they've been masking beforehand in all honesty in all cases, but open the windows, make sure that there is good airflow. That makes such a huge difference when it comes to transmission. There are these portable carbon dioxide readers that you can buy. I'm positive that you've all seen them, but they are very expensive. I was looking here in Aotearoa and they're like $400. So for those of you rich enough to, that is another option. Now, what about if you actually have friends who are immunocompromised, or they're dealing with long COVID, or they're elderly or something? What can you do if you want to see them? The exact same things, except you'll be wearing a mask all the time, like before you actually see them face to face, at least for 7 days, at the very minimum for 7 days beforehand. Though, like I said, people would be masking indoors all the time anyway, to make sure that we can take care of this, okay? Cases will go down a lot if we actually did that, okay? This is what living with COVID is actually like. It's not just pretending it doesn't exist, it just means making some accommodations. I know that for people who are immunocompromised or have long COVID or who are disabled or elderly, the world for people has shrunk, because people don't want to actually put the effort in to do the things to make sure that people are safe to be able to go places. You want to know why you're not seeing as many like immunocompromised people out and about? Because it's not safe for people to go out and about, okay? Bigger things to do are, one, join a union. I know that for me personally, I'm a union member very proudly. I know that the protections in place for us as employees would not be anywhere close to as strong as they are. I know that working from home would be so much harder without the union there, okay? Like, joining a union is one of the best things that you can do. So many of the things that we actually take for granted that are just stock standard, like the 5-day work week, like the hours of work, that was fought for tooth and nail by unions. So I'll have some information about unions down below, and I've already recommended this video from Legion Miller, but I will do so yet again. Another thing that you can do is be an influencer at work. And I know that not everybody is as annoyingly opinionated and passionate as me. Like, I get it. I'm that annoying person that will speak up in every meeting, but I'm an executive assistant, right? So it's easy for me to talk to my boss, who is in a position of power, and actually have influence over things. And plus, that's just me anyway.
I'm obnoxious.
But what you can do is point out the issues of traveling for work, especially plane travel. Oh my gosh, that's so dangerous to do. But like, reducing business travel is one of the key things to do. And honestly, most of those business meetings can happen over the internet. You don't have to be there in person in most cases. Also, wearing your mask at work and actually talking with people about COVID and the COVID spike and stuff, actually having those conversations will help you realize you are not alone in feeling like this, okay? Trust me, you are really not. And if you feel like you can't speak up, trust me, there are other people that you work with that are vocal, annoying people like me who will speak up about issues. Because after going through a number of things myself, I've just been like, actually, no, I'm not going to let this happen to anybody else ever again. Isn't it weird how when terrible things happen to you, it can give you more gumption? That shouldn't happen. I'll add that to the list of things to talk about with my therapist. One of the other key things that everybody really should do is vote. I don't just mean in the big elections, I mean in your small local elections, like with mayors, like with all sorts. And I don't just mean like regular, oh, I like this person's advert. I mean, be an informed voter and actually write in, talk to your representatives and call them, maybe even. Just like all of the recommendations have been going around to make sure that you're actually contacting your local reps when it comes to the abhorrent things which are happening in Palestine. Doing that same thing when it comes to COVID protections is what will actually help to influence things as well. I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. Anger is a very useful emotion to channel into doing things which make positive changes. And that is exactly what has fueled this video. It's what fuels a lot of my life. Weirdly enough. For the people that struggle with long COVID, I'm going to link a couple of Instagram pages below. Long COVID SOS always shares all of the most up-to-date things that are actually happening in terms of studies on long COVID, news stories, stories and everything, and it's kind of like having this community of other people that are also going through the same thing. So I really do recommend actually following that. Remember in 2020 when people were really questioning all of the bad things of capitalism? We really do need to get back to that point of why we're wanting to actually uphold this system when we're dealing with triple the costs, a cost of living crisis, and people just being left by the complete wayside without any support. Why we're accepting this all in the name to keep up the facade of capitalism from crumbling. Why is that? Thank you so much for watching the whole thing. I know it wouldn't have been a fun one to do, but at least now you know some positive actions that you can take to make the world a little bit safer for you and for everybody else. And once again, massive thank you to all of the people that I actually had conversations with on Instagram. Like I said, anonymity, whatever, I can't talk now, is the most important thing. So I really was careful to try and protect your identity and everything that could pinpoint you or whatever. But it's very much global issues that we're dealing with here. Even people from Europe to the USA, from Australia to New Zealand here in Aotearoa. Yeah, it's global issues that we're dealing with, so I really wanted to have this conversation. Please remember to be respectful and polite in the comment section down below. I know that when it comes to COVID, people can get really scary, but I'll be monitoring, okay, as best I can. If you made it all the way to the end, please leave the mask emoji, but also one of your favourite things about being outdoors, because I love nature personally, even though I can't really spend much time out there because I get completely exhausted very easily. What are your favourite emojis to do with nature? Because mine would be a lot of foxes and pretty flowers, basically. Anyway, I will see you again very soon for the two-parter on higher and tertiary education. I've got over 500 responses to the survey. The survey is now closed. Sorry, it was only open until the 14th. It was open for well over a week, so hopefully you've had a chance to participate. There's a lot of responses to go through. I am very humbled and grateful for everybody that ever participates in this stuff, because I think it's really important to continue having this dialogue, continue having good conversations. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. I'm gonna go lie down because my head is splitting right now. Bye, love Liz.